Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Despite Scrappy's mega confidence in himself and his team going into his home event with Toronto, of course, coming up at MWII, he does admit that OpTic are certainly the favourites going into the tournament, saying they are playing the best Call of Duty right now, and with FaZe at 4-1 and with Toronto at 3-2, it's an actually quite clear cut that OpTic should walk away with this tournament, and if they do, does the World Championship follow in due course as well? Very much intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into. First of all, just wanted to mention quickly that the Challengers Cup was going on last night, and Dylan, Rex and Co made a reverse sweep against Doug's team to knock them out of the tournament, and then went on to win the entire thing. So if Doug had won this series, who knows what would have happened, but it's actually quite important over the coming weeks here what's going on in the Challengers side, because the World Championship is going alongside the main Call of Duty World Championship in Vegas in the middle of June, and the teams to go to that are determined by the seeding in the point standings, but also therefore by a last chance qualifier. So the results in Toronto's Challengers event are massive, because if, let's say, Doug's team gets, I think maybe they have to get top 4, top 3, or maybe it's top 6, something like that, they will secure enough pro points to guarantee themselves a spot at the World Championship. But that's not going to be so easy, and it's even more difficult for Doug, because I think because Snoopy came in recently, they don't have the pro points they used to have. So with all of his talents start getting stolen away, not stolen, but you know, he gets called up to Kremp and Beans and Co get called up to the main team, so all the Challengers points they had, they get lost through the roster, so it makes it even more challenging for them. But Gunless' team with Pristini, Rex and Nero Poison finally coming good. It's been a long time coming really when Gunless has actually started to make noise again in Challengers. Same with Pristini, I would say. Maybe Nero was the factor here, coming recently off that Boston team, dropping down when they have made the changes they have done over the last couple of weeks. I will say that Rostermania this season is due to be rather spicy, and there was some hilarious Rostermania going on in the World Series of Warzone side. We talked about this player ScummN right the other day. There was some drama going on with him and Parasite and queuing up with cheaters and all this stuff, and he effectively got dropped last night by his team that he was going to be playing with. As he says, feel betrayed in a friendship, feel scammed out of money and a spot in the biggest tourney of the year. I'm not the best at controlling my emotions, but I do feel I have the right to feel the way I do, especially when they've been plotting this for days. So it started with this one. Well, I got dropped for World Series of Warzone. If anyone needs a third for Stage 1 semis to finals, because I believe this is starting very soon, let me know. At Huskers, at Unrational, I'm praying on yours downfall, and I hope you'll do absolutely terrible. This reminds me actually of Parasite's famous tweet to Exotic back in the day. What was it like? Pipe down, you're worthless, you're not a friend of mine. I hope your career is plagued with nothing but failure. Something like that anyway. You guys probably know the quote at this point. And it's kind of one of those tweets. So we love to see someone. It's quite entertaining. Like, you know, it must be said that people were coming at ScummN about this. And fundamentally, I can understand why ScummN thinks, why am I getting the hate when these guys were dropping me? But it's just like, if you're not a particularly likable character on Twitter and elsewhere, people aren't really going to take your side. That's just how I tend to see it. So, you know, he's basically saying that he's got screwed over here, life-changing money, which is fair enough. And if they were plotting on his downfall, then there is a debate to be had. But as Huskers goes on to explain, decided to part ways with Scump for multiple reasons and will be finding a new third moving forward. Not sure why he felt the need to tweet this, but I wish him and his future teammates the best in managing his immaturity, negativity, and lack of teamwork. So really much explaining why he was dropped right then and there. Let's dive into, though, Rostermania going forward. We know that iLLeY will obviously want to get back into the CDL at some point. I mentioned last night a pretty interesting time for him to kind of make the return, with teams will be looking at changes absolutely going forwards. Highly respected by many. iLLeY will want to get ideally on a top 4 team. And right now the top 4 teams are OpTic, but that's not going to happen. FaZe, which is, it seems unlikely to me. I don't think that's probably they wouldn't bring iLLeY in, but maybe they would. Maybe there's a world in which that could be the case. It'd be a pretty wild decision actually if Slasher was gone and iLLeY was coming in. Then Toronto, which would be interesting because iLLeY of course is very local to Toronto, but not sure where he slots in there. Really depends how the rest of the season goes though, right? MWII and Champs is going to determine so much as to what big teams are going to make changes. Even over at the Los Angeles Thieves, it could be possible, depending on which teams that are expected to place well don't place well, which is likely going to be the case with at least 1 or 2 of them. So Scrappy gave his thoughts after their series victory on Saturday up against the Los Angeles Guerrillas. They won in about 30 minutes on who their biggest competition is going into the major, because there's a few teams up there in conversation. I mentioned the kind of the big 4 with Los Angeles Thieves in the category as well. Sublaners also aren't bad though, and this is pretty interesting to see that all time these are the online qualifier records in COD League history since it was introduced. FaZe lead it up 51-18, no surprises there, but OpTic aren't far behind. This is, of course, since the Cold War days, and they were OpTic Chicago then, so kind of clarifies across all those years. I guess Empire 17 and 8, but rest in peace that brand. So 48 and 21 for OpTic, not far behind what FaZe have done. Sublime is in third, 42 and 27. They've been historically very good online. Ultra 39 and 30, they're placed fourth. Then Rokkr, then Thieves actually marginally negative. Then you get down to Ravens, which is pretty ugly. Surge actually the same as Ravens. Like, that's pretty damning, isn't it? Let's be honest here. 26 and 43 over the last 3 years for Surge, same as the Ravens. And then you've got Breach, of course, positive record, but they haven't been around too long, etc, etc. Legion not looking so good. So right now it's FaZe and OpTic that are the two teams at the top of the standings and with the best seed this time around again. And Scrappy says, look, as good as I think I am and as good as I think my team is, OpTic right now, when you play them in scrims, when you play them in matches, they are the team to beat, they are the team to take down. And looking at the bracket as we did earlier today, OpTic have a pretty straightforward run, you would think, all the way to the winners finals.
For you though, Scrap, because you guys are one of the few teams to walk away with the trophy this year. You've already made bank, you're staying in the top 3, top 5 in everyone's discussions. But where do you see yourself right now? How do you see the league stacking up?
Yeah, so, I'll probably say, like, OpTic's probably the best team right now. Obviously, they beat us.
That's right.
They beat everyone else. So, I would probably put them. But, I don't think we're far behind. We've been putting a lot of work in this stage, our home major. And, we're going to come out for the major as hot as we can.
Scrap, for you guys have
Getting
been
sturdy.
pretty great this season.
Yeah,
I mean, picking up a
like a worm.
championship, you're the front runner for Rookie of the Year, and I feel like recently you've entered the discussion for the MVP on the season in general. If you guys have a good ending these next couple of events, what does that mean to you? The community sort of putting your name up there with some of the best that we have in the scene, and is that something that has sort of been in your mind a little bit? Like you have the opportunity to get the MVP, Rookie of the Year, and win champs.
Yeah, it's cool. I can't say I'm surprised. I knew I was going to come into the league and be the best at the player I could be. It's cool. It's cool to see my name up there with some of the best players in the league. But, I'm just trying to come win championships, and whatever comes after that will be cool.
Love it.
So the last two events, Major 3 in Texas and Major 4 in Columbus, unfortunately not in front of a crowd, were, well, OpTic made the grand finals both times. They came in last time with a 5-0 record, 15-3 map counts. They looked super good all weekend until really they made it to the grand finals, where in the Major 3 case, they played Toronto and got outclassed in the final, especially in the controls, and last time out the same story by Los Angeles Thieves. Those are teams that seem to just have a little bit of that extra gear when it mattered. They were better in control, frankly, in the finals. OpTic lost the Hydro hardpoint to both those teams respectively when they played the finals. So there were some things for OpTic to think about and to work on, and they made it all the way, and they lost to a team that was straight up just better on that particular day. This time around though, where is the competition coming from? Because OpTic, I think, are getting better and better. Their Search and Destroy is pretty much undefeated so far. I think their control is taking some strides as well. Their hardpoint is always going to be incredibly good against anyone they play, and their closest competition so far appears to be FaZe. The way FaZe have played so far, FaZe 4-1, they're, I mean, not 3-2 for once, right? So maybe FaZe are really coming different this time round, but OpTic always beat FaZe. This is the thing for FaZe, especially, that will concern them, is that they're looking at maybe the best that FaZe have looked for some time now. Slasher played really well this online split, they were looking pretty good, but if they play OpTic at some point, as they might do in the winners finals or losers finals or even the grand finals, their record is not good. They haven't beaten them so far this season, so OpTic will have massive confidence in that. I mean, yes, they've lost to Toronto recently, OpTic, and that is a team that has had their number a little bit, but they got revenge relatively recently. Thieves, same deal as well. Yes, they lost to them back in the finals at Major 4, but still, Thieves are starting in losers. If OpTic just win all their games to go to the finals, are Thieves going to meet them in the finals from losers round 1? Possible, but highly unlikely with the way they're playing. So a lot of the candidates that OpTic have to really worry about in Toronto and Thieves, the two teams that have kind of had their number a little bit on LAN lately, are not out of the picture. Toronto can certainly make it, but Toronto find themselves on the other side of the bracket, where they will probably play FaZe in winners round 2, which is always going to be a hard game, especially with Toronto Search and Destroy not looking so good. So yeah, Scrappy is an interesting point. I feel like Toronto could definitely win this event. I think they're going to be better on LAN than they will be online. They could get the job done. They've got the home crowd buff, all that good stuff as well. But just the way that it's shaping up for OpTic, given the fact that they play Florida round 1 and then round 2 they play either Rokkr or Boston, is pretty much as ideal as it's going to get for them. So are OpTic just peaking at the right time. I don't know what you guys expect here, because OpTic fans must be coming in with so much confidence to this event. You'd think eventually they're going to get over the line if they make another finals, as they should well be favoured to do at the present time. But there is obviously some concern that last year there was a lot of talk about FaZe always silver surfing and getting second all the time, and OpTic have gone twice in a row doing exactly that. But you've got to think they get over the line at some point in one of the final 2 events of the season. These are some overall numbers here from some of the game modes. Actually, not too many OpTic players appearing apart from in the search and destroy category, when Shotzzy has a 1.63 so far, Ghosty has a 1.29, Dashy has a 1.26. I mean, these numbers are pretty outrageous actually to think that there's, I mean, in fairness, it's the same story for FaZe. So that's why, to me, you look across the board here and you think, alright, FaZe are looking like the strongest competitor right now to OpTic Texas, but when they play, they can never seem to beat them. And even the team of the week that the breakdown come up with, Hydra made it, absolutely deserved. And then they put Dashy and Shots, you know, I guess they couldn't really decide between if they wanted to have just one OpTic guy or 2 OpTic guys. I feel like I would have probably put Bance on here actually, because I think Bance had a stellar week for the Minnesota Rokkr. I might have put him on here instead of, tough to say whether you'd kind of remove Dashy or Shotzzy from this, because I think Simp probably deserved his spot in here as well. He really turned up this week. But I think Bance honourable mention at the very least. On the other side of the equation, these were the worst KDs for any player in a specific game mode. Lots of London on here. In the hard point, it was nasty with a 0.7. Even Kenny, though, down at a 0.78. He had a rough time, as did a large number of the Thieves guys. Search and destroy, it's pretty ugly here. I mean, Mack is appearing on a couple of these lists in both the hard point and the search, which is pretty ugly. Scraps with a 0.63. Arcitys with the worst in control at a 0.66, which is pretty rough. And actually, 2 of the FaZe guys on here, Simp and Slasher with a 0.83, 0.85 respectively in control. So that is definitely still a weakness for FaZe. And if they can't shore up their control and also their hardpoint gameplay, it just feels difficult to imagine they're going to be able to take down OpTic this tournament. These are also some interesting numbers again from this Call of Duty League stats account. Looking at average assists per death. So I think the average assist number per death is probably something like 0.25 or something. Some players have way above that, at least for the AR categories. I think it's different depending on ARs and SMGs here with what the average assists are. But yeah, Ghosty is up here with Awakening at the top. This is, so basically Ghosty's numbers, 0.45, are 28% above the league average, and Awakenings are the highest at 31% above the league average. It's also interesting that we get quite a lot of Vegas on here. Clay, Temp, and TJ right at the top, and also Standy. Pretty impressive, right, that their assist game is getting up a fair bit. Probably implies they're playing well as a team. I would have probably expected to see more of the Los Angeles Thieves guys on here, but actually it's a couple of the OpTic guys. Cellium's on here. I guess if you do a lot of damage, you're going to get a lot of assists in fairness, and a similar kind of story on the SMG side, but CleanX actually by far and away the #1 in that category for SMGs. And just one final thing here before we close out the video, a look back at Elimination Round 4 2020 World Championship between Chicago Huntsmen and OpTic Gaming Los Angeles. Game 5, Round 11, Arclov Peak, when Envoy clutched this 1v1 here back in Modern Warfare 2019. Crazy story, of course, and really did spell the picture of how Call of Duty would go for years to come. But Envoy actually comes back at this and mentions today that he prefers the squad spawns of Modern Warfare 19 to what we presently have. Back in MW19, if you spawned one way, like your entire team would spawn with you. Maybe that was more readable. It wasn't great. It wasn't particularly good for competition, but Envoy reckons that system as it was and the algorithm that created that spawn system was actually better than what we currently have, which is a pretty damning indictment, it's got to be said, on the way that Infinity Ward have trended over the last couple of years. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
Almost Damon,
to make a big play.
Here we go. You listen to Imagine Dragons by any chance?
No, he probably didn't get spotted. Ah, he looked the wrong way. That's so unfortunate. aBeZy, good read.
Oh, hey, Mom.
Hands over the face for now. Wide.
Yo, ask your mom. Ask your mom.
You came at a bad time.
Yeah, Mom, you listen to Imagine Dragons nuts across your forehead.
Yo, Mom, you listen to Imagine Dragons, Mom? Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Okay. Why don't you ask Mom what he's talking about over there?
This is an interesting moment, too. Well, yeah, okay, so Atlanta.